So I wanted to give a few words about the Michael Day competition for 2025. So this competition goes back to 2007 when the Berks Photographic Society of Reading, PA got an email from the president of a camera club in the UK who thought he was sending it to Reading, England. So one of our members, Cheryl Tumalo, picked up the message, started corresponding with Michael Day, and Michael had the invitation had been, let's have a friendly inter-club competition. So everybody laughed about the fact that it went to the US and not to Reading, England. And they decided to proceed with that competition. And it was ongoing from 2007 yearly, except for 2018, 19, and 20. And at the urging of our then president of this club, he had me try to rejuvenate it. And we did in 2021. And we've been ongoing. There are 5 clubs, ours plus 4 in Europe. Henry will be selecting the 15 images tonight from the best of the year for us to then submit for the 2026 Michael Day competition. It was named after Michael when he died in 2010. They decided to name the competition after him. Our club will take over the organization of this for the next one, 2027. And we'll have an international judge. I already have my letter out to the judge, waiting to see the judge's response for 2027. So that's what tonight is about. And Henry, you'll be introduced appropriately, but thank you so much for your continued work with our club. We really enjoy your expertise and your good words. So thank you.
You're quite
Ken,
welcome.
do you want?
It's
Right. Just very quickly, I see some faces I do not recognize. Cassandra, okay. Oh, that's right. I did meet you at the show. Yeah. And then the gentleman behind. Michael, nice to visit, see you. Yes. I was wondering if you could say a few words later, but we'll see how it goes. But thank you, especially because I'm into, well, both Angela and I are into film, so we're curious as to what you may look for the future. All right, just very quickly, thank you everybody who participated in the contest, and I'm looking forward to see who we have as the winners. But at the same time, next Monday is our annual State of the Club meeting and the election of officers. At this point, we don't have any officers that are competing to be elected. So if anybody wants to nominate themselves, a friend, an enemy who might want to run for office, you're more than welcome. We will take nominations from the floor next Monday as well. That is in our bylaws that we can do that. And we can vote at that point. Again, please, we do have 2 major openings, a president and vice president. And I know we've got the same amount of people here that watch every month that I'm preaching to. But please, if you know of anybody, you want to nominate anybody, go ahead. And again, I don't want to take any more time. We have the Santa shoot this coming Saturday from 10 to 2 or 10 to 3? 3, okay, because it said 10 to 2 originally. Yeah. 10 to 3. And if you've never done that, I would suggest please come out, even if you only stay for an hour to help. It's a lot of fun. You'll really kick. Well, wear your, yes, thank you, Kim. Wear your Berks photographic t-shirts if you have them. And if you have the polo shirts, you can wear those too. That predates the t-shirts, but okay. I'm just gonna turn it over to Vince again, please.
I just thought of one more thing I had wanted to say. I came before tonight to I was at my wife's library board Christmas party. And as I was leaving very prematurely, I said, I have to go to a meeting. And someone said, well, where are you going? I said, well, the Berks Camera Club meeting. And this woman who is at least 80 said, oh my goodness, the Camera Club. I was a model for them one year when I was 17. And she just came across last week going through family pictures, a photograph of her. She said she modeled for the club on Noble Street, our prior headquarters, in a bathing suit and in a dress. And she said, thank God I couldn't find the bathing suit picture, but she now has the dress from the dress shoot. And she was 17, she's in her 80s now. So it's at 60 some years ago, 70 some years ago. And our club's been around since 1933, so that made sense. Her father was a member of the club, very active, and her brother broke her arm, and another woman who turns out later to become her sister-in-law, they didn't know each other. They were the two models for the club photographers. So I thought that was kind of cute. So that's it.
All right, very good. Welcome everybody. This is our best of the year competition where we take all the winners from each of the previous competitions from the year. And Henry, who has judged this competition, I believe, did you say this is your fourth time, Henry? Or you have done it fourth time?
I'm not really sure. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Anyway, Henry is an extremely talented photographer. If you don't know his work, definitely go check it out. And we're so pleased to have him tonight to judge our best of the year competition. So with that, let's get started. Henry, just a quick review, like I'll share the image. I'll let people kind of look at it. I'll tab something so people see what the name of the image is, and then again, who the photographer is and any award. And then you'll do your critique and we'll just go through the whole, each category like that.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, let's see here. Hopefully this works. Okay, that looks like it worked. Okay. All right, does everybody see that?
I can.
Okay. 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 Here we go. This is Lunge Time by Tom Story. This received second place.
This is a nice image. This is good capture. It's something that very few of us will ever get to see. So I applaud the photographer for both capturing the image and feel a little bit jealous that they got to see such an event. It's a good high quality image of a really interesting natural event. So well done, well captured, and there's very little that other than that I could say. It's a good technical image. The highlights are under control, and it is what it is, which is a nice solid image.
Okay. Elegance and Reflection. Jackie Burke has received honorable mention.
Again, a very nicely done image. I like this one a lot. It's well composed. It's well exposed. It's in focus and sharp. I'm going to actually take an opportunity here. The images that I got sent over are seem to be limited to 1080 on the short side, or maybe on the long side. I'm not sure which it was, but I didn't see anything that was bigger than 1080, 1900 by 1080. That actually hurts on the vertical images. Just something to keep your eyes on. You might want to check your resolutions now, because there's really no reason to be looking at small images. They transfer easily. You know, the game has changed. So I'd up the image size. So on something like this, I'm not able to really say, you know, I love how sharp the eye is because I can't really tell, but it looks like it's in good sharp focus. It's an interesting picture. The only question I would have is that there seems to be in the shadow areas, there are hints of the background, and that's fine if that's what the photographer decided to do. Um, you know, might want to try different things, either going to total black or bringing the shadows back up. Don't know, haven't looked at it, might work, might not. But that would be the only thing I'd say to look at with this image. Nicely done.
Lily reflection,
Yeah, this is it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
Jacqueline Henry or Henny.
Yeah, this is a good case where it's the long side is basically 1080, so it sort of shuts down the photograph a little bit, but it's a nice shot. It's a good flower shot. You know, it's the problem that I have with flower shots today is that as nice as this is, we see a lot of them. So how are you going to treat your flower shots differently so that they're really unique and really stand out? Um, and if you're shooting flowers for fun, which I do all the time, I love being in meadows, I love being in gardens, taking flower pictures, but look for something a little bit different rather than a straight on angle. Try to examine it a little bit more closely, and try to do something different with the flower shots. It's the only thing I'd say. And this is a nice image. The problem with these is that we see a lot of them. So, but it's well done. It's well exposed and it's well executed.
Alone in Maine. Vince Pellegrini has received third place.
It's a beautiful image. It's nicely exposed. I love the feeling behind it. The mist. I'm assuming this is morning. You know, maybe a little bit more pop. But it's a well composed image. Its composition is really solid in terms of horizon line and the placement of the island. It's very well done. Nicely done. Whether it has a little bit more pop to it or not, I'm not sure. I didn't really play with this one because I thought it was really nicely finished off.
Billabong. Lee Reeves.
I think that overall this is a very pretty picture. I like the sun very much. I think that was handled quite nicely. There is a little bit of a lack of sharpness to a degree in the foreground area near the bottom that throws it off visually. And you get into a situation with these where you sort of say, what is this a picture of? And I think it would be, I love the back. This is one that I would treat as a background object to go in with something else because there's no central subject really to it, which is a problem with a lot of scenics. It's certainly not reserved for this one. This is a nicely done frame in a tough situation with the lighting. Foreground, I think you could use a little bit more depth of field, make it a little bit sharper, and I think that would help it out. But look for you really need a subject, and that's what's wrong with so many photographs that I judge is I don't know really what I'm looking at. And I've sort of come to the conclusion that there's more to photography than a pretty picture. If your goal is to take pictures, this is a great one. If your goal is to start making photographs, then you need a little bit more.
Sunrise Splash. Ginny Lodge.
I would say the same comments about this one. It's well executed. The exposure is great. And I might play with this. I don't remember whether I did or not. I'm almost certain on this one that you can bring the whites up a little bit more, increase the contrast. And that's something that, we're going to talk about when I'm doing the editing, is a lot of the images that I see in camera clubs today aren't taking full advantage of the contrast that's available. And I don't want to say that's true of this one because I don't really remember. I'd have to see what the histogram looked like. But I think you could probably pull out a little bit more white and make it pop a little bit more. But again, it's a pretty picture. But does it get into the level of being a quality photograph? It needs a subject. It needs something. Otherwise, kind of like I've seen it. And I brought this up before, the Portland Head Lighthouse, when we were doing competitions, we would get 40 images of the Portland Head Lighthouse that were all the same, basically, because you can only stand in like 3 spots. So you have to do something different. You have to find what the essence of the photograph is. What is the internal event that's happening in your body that's telling you, that says, I need to photograph this. And, in this case, maybe it's a fisherman, maybe it's a surfer, maybe it's a boat. But why am I looking at this sort of global ocean? Other than the fact that it's a pretty sunset or sunrise. So just something to think about, but it's a pretty picture.
Evening Flight, Tom Story.
Very nicely done shot. This has a little bit more contrast that can pop up with it, but it's a well done, well captured image. Birds in flight are not easy to do, so I give the shooter a great deal of credit, and they're nice looking birds too. So nicely done.
Deception Past Sunset, Vince Pellegrini.
Again, it's a nicely composed image. Beautiful scene. This one definitely has some room for bringing out the pop to it. And I think you could take it up a notch with a little bit different editing. But it's a nicely envisioned shot. It's a well done technical shot. In terms of the capture, I think there's some room in post for this one.
Burden of Creation, Jackie Burke. This received first place.
This is just a beautiful capture. I love the tonality of the image overall. I don't think I'd change a thing. I think there's a clear understanding that you don't have to stay within a prescribed format. The whole picture to me balances out, and it tells a story. This is more than just a picture of a bird, and that's kind of that. I judged these about a month ago now, I guess, Mike, something like that.
Yeah, a few weeks.
So,
Yep.
yeah, I don't remember exactly why I would choose particular things, why I did it, but this one tells a story to me, and it's technically very good, and it's different. This is something I don't see every day, so well done.
Spout, Lee Reeves.
Interesting capture. There's a couple things, and I think this one is one that I have set up to be worked with a little bit. The foreground is a little bit too dark to really make out what's going on immediately. I would have given this a little bit more room to have a little bit more context. I think it's cropped a little bit too tightly, and the cropping sort of forces the horizon line to be in the center, which in 90% of the cases is going to disadvantage the image. It just try to keep your horizon lines on one of the third lines, or at least not dead center in the frame. I'd like to see a little bit more at the bottom to give me more of a bit of perspective. And also, there's a lot of room in processing on this one to bring out the whales. So I think I have this one set up to as an editing example.
Raw power. Vince Pellegrini.
Very nice waterfall. Like it a lot. It's well done. And this is strictly personal taste. I might tone it a little bit differently. And you could do that easily by selecting a different film stock or a toner. I think you can get a little bit more pop out of the white without overexposing it, and a little bit more contrast and really make it pop off the screen. But you know, it's really close. It's a really nice shot. And I love the way the water is flowing in this one. It's a good shot. I like it a lot.
Okay, that wraps up Class A nature. Next we go to Class A pictorial. Dark Spirits. Ellen Zimmerman.
I think within the context of the title, this is well done. I think in terms of visual imagery, there's some more contrast and tonality that can be brought out that I think that would make it a more visually stimulating image, minus the title. Okay, if you're going for something else, if you're going for just the title, and that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I would leave it like this. Otherwise, I might play around and try to lighten it a little bit. And when I'm making these comments, please be aware that these are my opinions only. The photographer is the person that decides what they want their image to look like. And nobody else really should be judging it. If you're happy with it, and if you're satisfied, and if it's saying what you want it to say, then great. Ignore what I'm telling you. I don't really know what this is saying. So there's no great message in this if I don't read the title. So you want to make it a little bit more visually interesting unless it's done for a specific purpose, which only the photographer can determine.
Lagos Morning. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Becky Carpenter. Lagos Morning, honorable mention.
Okay, this is an example of why cell phones can't compete with regular cameras. I love the woman in the center. There's some technical problems with this one that are as a result of cell phones. And there's also some tech that some of them could be resolved easily. And this one I think I have on there. But as one of the things that most people don't realize is that even though cell phones will say, I've got a 42 megapixel camera in my cell phone, that's not, just because you have more megapixels doesn't make it better. You know, the design of the megapixel, the pixel is inherent in the camera design. So you have 42 million pixels on something like this, but you have a tiny sensor size, and it just doesn't compute right. Things just don't work quite right. But we'll work on this one a little bit later too. Had this been shot on a proper camera, I think it would have been great.
Through the Blossoms into Spring. Jackie Burke has received 3rd place.
Beautiful capture, and I don't know what the rules of your competition are. I know that most wildlife competitions don't allow you to alter things too dramatically. But from my perspective, you know, there's two things. If you're going after a wildlife competition, you don't want to change it. If you're going for a saleable image that is more pleasant to look at, I would take out the branch right above the bird, and we'll do that really quickly at the end of when we do the editing. Totally changes the picture, makes it much more saleable, and from a gallery point of view, a much more desirable image. This is an image that if it was submitted to one of our competitions where we don't say that you can't change things, I would have rejected it because of the stick, the branch coming down. On the other hand, without the branch in, it would move way up into the top 10%. So, it depends on what you're using the picture for, when you're using it. And I'll show this one in with the editing.
Pollinators. Deborah Lewinson has received second place.
I like this image because it's different. Okay, this one I had to go, whoa, what's going on here? And it made me think, and it made me smile. And it's well done, it's well exposed, and it's different. This is an image I want to look at. I want to take a couple minutes and look and see how you did it, how you shot it, how you added it in, or did whatever you did to it. But I want to look at this image, and it gives me, it makes me stand up and take notice, or rather sit down and take notice, because I'm usually sitting when I'm looking at pictures.
Sundown at the Shore. Ginny Lodge.
This falls into the pretty picture category, and it's nicely done. I'd like to see a little bit more light on the foreground, which is easy to do. Again, it falls into the pretty picture category, and it's nicely done.
Sunset Illusion. Vince Pellegrini.
This actually, when I first looked at it, my first reaction was, oh, a forest fire. So there's some stuff going on there that sort of fools the eye. And I think this is nicely done. There's some banding at the bottom that it's kind of hard to see, but if you look closely along the very bottom of the image, I can actually see some light bands that don't make much sense. So technically, there's room for improvement on this one, but I like the overall image.
Waiting for the Fish. Lee Reeves.
This is a pretty picture that starts to elevate itself because of the figures that are in it. There's a shadow control problem with this. There's a contrast problem that's easy to fix. In fact, most of what I'm going to show tonight is very easy to fix. So there's room for improvement on this one, but it's a nice capture. The design is nice. The positioning is nice. There's just some work in post that will elevate this to a higher level.
Gateway into Reading. Vince Pellegrini.
I like the abstract nature very much. There's some room for a little bit more pop in this, but I like strange images like this, and this one grabbed my attention. Again, I think that there's a lot more pop that can come out, which admittedly now I've gone from being a large format black and white photographer that sort of poo-pooed bright colors to one that's using a lot of more bright colors at this point. I'm going for a lot higher contrast images. And the reason I'm doing it is because they pop off the screen or they pop off the wall. So imagine yourself when you're walking into a gallery, that what you want your picture to be is when somebody just gives a quick glance of the room, you want them to focus in on your picture. Okay, you know that if you walk into a room of black and white prints and there's one Ansel Adams in there, that and your eye immediately goes to that because you know you're looking at quality, you know you're looking at good contrast, and that's what you should be going for with all of your images. You want impact. And there's ways to get better impact on this one.
The Watcher's Moon. Jackie Burke received first place.
I like this a lot. It was a thoughtful image. Obviously, it's it's a well-constructed image. I'll leave it at that. I might pop the moon a little bit more in terms of the whiteness. This is one that I would probably play with for a couple of days, try different things until I settled in on what I wanted it to look like. And one of the things that, well, we'll talk about a couple of things that will help that process, the editing process in the end. But this is a nicely composed image, well constructed too. Nice job.
Cranberries.
So
Lodge.
You have to watch your processing, and you have one of the things that you have to understand what your output medium is going to be. Okay, because you can get away with things in print that you can't necessarily get away with when you're doing a projection system like this. I'm not sure how you're doing it, but if you look off to the left of the bowl, for the left-hand side and in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see leftover editing marks where you've blacked out too much and you haven't blended it in. So that may not be apparent on your screen, but if you're sending it to a competition that is going to be using a digital projector, especially digital projectors, or certain types of TVs, these marks will show up. So I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but I can absolutely see it on mine, where the editing was taking place. And from a judging point of view, that's going to kill it off right away. Okay, you've got to blend in your editing or it's going to get tossed.
Afternoon Delight. Julie Stoffer.
I really thought this was interesting. I'm not at all sure what it is, but I like the idea behind it. I like the execution. The lily is a little bit on the hot side. I'd tone it down just a little bit. This one needs a little bit better highlight control. But I think conceptually it's a very nicely done piece of art. This starts to transcend, where are you between a picture and a photograph and art? And this is somewhere on that continuum because the photographer is actually creating an image. They're seeing something in their head. And I forget the person's name, but whoever created this is probably a little bit on the nuts side, and I like it.
On and Over Deception Pass. Vince Pellegrini.
Again, a nicely composed image. Everything works on this. It needs more pop. There's more pop available in this, and I think it can really stand out. And again, this is something I'm seeing across the board is there needs to be kind of a better understanding of the histogram in post-processing as well as in the creation process. There's just more room in here for color and for vibrancy. But it's a well-constructed image, has lots of potential.
Okay, and that does it for Class A pictorial. And we'll move on to Class B nature. Frozen Wave. Mike Rumler, this received second place.
So I have to be nice to you now, right, Mike?
Put it up.
No, I think this is a well-shot image. It shows an understanding of shutter speed and the capturing of water. And water, in a lot of cases, such as this one, immediately becomes an abstract image. It's a little bit too close to the center of the frame for me, but I think it's really good. The exposure is well done. There's a little bit more contrast that can pop out of this. But when you're working with water, it can get tough really quick because you can blow out the highlights in an instant. So you have to be very careful. This is well done. I like it. It's an interesting image.
Good morning. Pat Falco.
I like this. I think it's an interesting view. I really wish it wasn't dead center. There's very few times when having your subject dead center actually works. And even though you've got the circle and everything is symmetrical, it just doesn't really work for me. I'd prefer to see some flow into the picture rather than my eyes going to the center of the image and staying there. It's almost like the corn doesn't matter because your eye is immediately going to go to the brightest spot or the most colorful spot in the frame. And on a picture like this, you sort of locked in there. And then you sort of wander around and say, oh, it's corn. And you sort of leave it at that. So try different compositions. But it's a thoughtful, creative approach to this.
Budding. Angel Rivera.
Okay, we're going to talk about this one, I believe, with the editing. Again, you're pretty much dead center in the center of the frame. And I understand why people do that. That's because your focus point is in the center of the frame and people don't move them. But if your focus point, if you're dead center in the center of the frame with your focus point, you're probably not going to get the quality of the images that you want. So learn to move your focus points quickly. Have it become just muscle memory to go sliding all over the place across the viewfinder with your focus points. And that's going to allow you to compose an awful lot better. It's a good capture. There's a lot that can be improved on this one, though, including the cropping. We'll talk about the cropping on this one, I'm sure.
Sun-Kissed Seal Rock. Mike Rumler has received third place.
Again, technically, it's a nicely done image. It's the black and white is good. I would like to see more of this. I'd like to see what's around it, or a different perspective, because it almost looks like it's shot too straight on. So it becomes a picture of the rock, rather than a black and white photograph. And that's kind of a hard concept to explain, but you have to shift sort of your perspective to why is it interesting? Why is it more than a rock? What it needs something more to me, but it's nicely executed and well done.
Strange Sky. Alan Chelius has received honorable mention.
It is. It's a strange sky and very interesting. I like that. I'm glad that you left the trees in at the bottom. I hope you took a few frames of just the sky itself, because you can use those forever. But it's nicely done. There's a little bit of room here for improving the contrast, making it pop a little bit more. Right now it's a little flat, but it's nicely done.
Fall Reflection number 2. Wendy Ferrero.
I like your intent here. I think that you need something else other than just the colors. It's a pretty picture. From a technical point of view, there's a fair amount of grain showing up and a few problems in the upper right-hand corner where you have some sensor dust. Those need to be cleaned up. And again, look for something that gives you a focus point. So when I'm looking at this, I'm wondering where do you want me to look? And what I would do on something like this is I'd crop into it and go totally abstract. I don't need to see the sky. You know, if you're going to try to weird us out with a reflection, you know, go all the way, go all in. So you don't necessarily need a reference point on something like this. These are tough. I love water reflections, but they generally have to have something that really differentiates them from what I see when I look in water. I want to see something different.
Floor as well. Mike Rumler.
Well exposed, tad hot, but not bad. Get a little bit more contrast. This is you know, one of those horizons in the center of the frame that sort of throws things off. And when you get into the situation, you don't necessarily have to, you know, try doing things that are a little bit weird, like tipping your camera down. So to me, it looks like, you know, you're shooting straight ahead at the surf exploding. What happens if you drop lower? You know, what happens if you stand as tall as you can and shoot down at it a little bit? Changing the angle here. You know, one of the biggest problems that most amateur photographers have is they stand up and they put the camera to their face and that's where they take the picture. So you need to be looking at different angles, your angle on things, and looking to do things that are going to be different. So again, you know, I would move it out of the center of the frame, the horizon line, and probably try to include more of the rocks in the front to give me a little bit better balance. But I wasn't there, so I'm not really sure what you could do.
Dragonfly Courtship. Pat Falco.
So we'll talk about this one a little bit too. The area across the top of the frame, the light part of the top of the frame, you need to get rid of that. You can do that by cropping in, and you can do it in any number of different ways in Photoshop. So the cropping on this leaves the image, the flower and the dragonflies, well, particularly the flower, in the center of the frame. That reduces its interest. The top hurts it, and off to the left-hand side are a black area and two bright golder areas that detract, they draw attention away from it. So I think this is one that we're going to work on a little bit, but it's within range. I mean, there's possibilities here. You know, you just want to make it a complete photograph.
Right place at the right time. Amy Langman, that's received first place.
I thought this was beautiful. Nicely done. Nicely done. I mean, if I messed around with it for a little bit, I might come up with something a little bit different, not necessarily better in terms of contrast, but well seen. Compositionally, it's well done. Love the reflection. Just a great job.
Back Creek Gator, Mike Rumler.
Well, we're in the center of the frame again. So that's really the major problem with this one from a visual point of view. I like the eye. This one has a little bit more room for work in post to pop the contrast and to change the focal points on it a little bit. Things like this are tough, you know, because, you know, they just are. not an easy thing to figure out compositionally. Yeah, but I'm glad he's facing that direction and not coming at you.
Golden Starburst, MC Lake, Angel Rivera.
So this is an image that has basically two major problems to it. And one of them, again, is very close to center horizon line, which hurts. But we don't have a focus point, because if the focus point is the sun, then as we look around, why are we looking at everything else? So on a shot like this, what I'd suggest that you do is you have some black rocks or something, whatever they are in the foreground. I can't really tell what they are. Drop down and use them as your focal point, or find a focal point. The sun as the focal point is a tough one, because that's where your eye is always going to be drawn. But it's sort of, it doesn't let you wander around the frame and understand what's happening. And things like this, when you get into a big scene, you've got to have something that's both smaller than the big scene and bigger than the big scene. What is your focus point again? That's the major thing. It's, if you look at, I'll just leave it at that. You just need to think a little bit more about focus points. Okay.
Kintla, Mike Rumler.
Nicely done. And it's a very pretty picture. There's a little bit of room for improvement in post, but it's a nice shot. There's some contrast that has to come up on this one, but it's a well done shot.
Okay, and that wraps it up for Class B Nature. Now we'll do Class B Pictorial. Early Fishing Lake, Angel Rivera.
Nice capture. When you're working in fog, it's really difficult to get a great fog shot. So one of the things that you should immediately do is just bracket all over the place, because fog by its nature is a middle gray. It is a gray. And even though it looks really cool to us as we're looking at it, when you get it back in a photographic environment, whether it's film or whether it's digital, you're going to be sitting right in the middle of your histogram. And now you have the problem or the issue of, how do I make gray interesting? And that's always a challenge. I like the way you captured this. That you got the sun in, you got the boat in. Again, I'd probably stay out of the middle of the frame and frame it a little bit differently. But and this one could, when you're working with fog, you've got to be thinking post. As soon as you start working fog, when you're shooting, you're thinking, okay, this has got to change in post, because otherwise it's going to be gray. So bracket all around it and try different things. But nice capture.
Original Solar Light, Pat Falco, second place.
Nicely done. Good eye. I like the silhouettes. I think that this one has some contrast issues, and by that I mean I think you could improve this a little bit by changing your contrast and working in post. But it's a nice shot and well seen.
Rainy Crossing, Mike Rumler.
I think this is a fun shot, and I'm glad you took it. It's on the weird side. It's just different, and I don't even know how to comment on something like this. But But it's a different shot. It's fun. And that's what everybody should be doing, is going out and having fun. I'm sure that as you sat there in your car, you said, "Oh, I can do this," and you had a good time shooting it. And that's the whole point of photography, because I doubt that there's anybody in your club that is going to be shooting for Sports Illustrated within the next year or for National Geographic. And if there is, you should rethink it, because those are terrible, terrible jobs to have. They sound a whole lot better than they actually are. So the whole idea of photography is to have fun. So anytime you take an image like this and makes you smile, go for it. Go for it. Who cares what anybody else thinks?
Reading Glow. Angel Rivera, honorable mention.
This is a well thought out shot. Somebody's trying to do something different. And you're working at the shot. This is a shot that can immediately be improved in post with very little work. So this is one we're certainly going to take a look at in a couple of minutes, but nicely shot. I like the way you were thinking, and I like what you came up with.
Carolina Wren Morning. Alan Chelius.
Okay. This actually, I immediately know we're going to talk about in terms of contrast. Nice and sharp. You've gone from birds on a stick to birds on a wire, and that works. Might crop it a little bit differently. No, well, I would crop it a little bit differently, but this one has it's a nice shot, and it can be improved. We'll talk about it in a little bit.
Psychedelic Brickwork. James Aguito has received 3rd place.
This is very nicely done, and it's well seen. I have a friend that shoots reflections, and she amazes me with what she sees, because she sees the reflections differently than I do. And I walk by shots that she turns into masterpieces. So if you could see reflections and you can work them, all the more power to you, and congratulations on that. This one you can pop up again in post, big time, and I think you'll find the improvements to be good. But if you could see reflections and do weird things like this with them, more power to you.
Wild Leap of Faith. Pat Falco received 1st place.
I really like this image. I thought technically it was really well done. So nice job with the processing on this one. It looks very realistic, except that I can't imagine a horse actually doing that, but you did a really good job technically with the masking. The tonality is good. You could probably improve it a little bit in terms of tonality and with stuff that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but it's a beautiful shot.
Time in Motion. Angel Rivera.
Nice capture. I like what you're trying to do with it. It's in the center of the frame, and you'll see in just a couple of minutes what happens when you crop it out of the center of the frame. It totally changes the picture, and it makes it much more powerful. So, take the focus point off the center, or focus and recompose, or plan on cropping in post. There is no crime to cropping in post. Nobody is going to arrest you for cropping. It is not against the morality of any of the world's major religions. Okay, you do not go to hell for cropping. But this one, it's a nice capture.
9 Stories. Mike Rumler.
It's a very interesting abstract image. I think it needs to pop more. The highlights are a little bit hot, but there's room for it. The problem with reflections is focus point. So it's can be very, very difficult to decide on whether you're going to focus on the reflection or whether you're going to focus, in this case, on the dividing lines. And sometimes it's best to do a shot of each and combine them together in post. And you can do that if you're thinking beforehand and saying, you know, I know that I can only get one of them in focus. If I want both of them in focus, I'm going to need to take two shots. But and that's true basically anytime you're shooting reflections. You know, if you're doing mirror work or something like that, you've got to make some decisions on focus points. But I like it. It's fun to look at.
Many hands. Amy Langman.
Interesting shot. Again, this is one that I think can benefit from a little bit more pop to it. But I think it's an interesting image. I'd also think when I'm shooting things like this, I would also shoot. You know, there's a difference between taking a picture of something and working an image. So, and it's sometimes a problem when you're traveling, because if you're traveling with a spouse or a friend or a partner, you know, your photography can impose on their time. So you have to be, you have to kind of work things out with whoever you're traveling with. But on a shot like this, I think, you know, and I hope you did, I'd work this shot. You know, this would be 20 minutes or a half hour for me. And it would either be my wife would go somewhere else or I'd end up in divorce court. But there's a lot of potential within here for a lot of different types of images and a lot of different uses. But it's a fun shot.
Silos and Moon Dusk. Angel Rivera.
Okay. It's well shot. The exposure is good. It's in focus. I like the moon. It needs to be a vertical. There's simply no reason visually to have that much negative space around it. In some cases, negative space is a real it's just a creative tool, and at other times the negative space here is just like why. So if you change this to a vertical, you immediately have a totally different shot that's going to attract much more attention to your subject matter.
My Stars Under the Sun. Mike Rumler.
This is a good shot. It's a fun shot. The thing that I don't quite understand, there's some striations in this image that may have resulted from post-processing, or they may be a result of file size. I'm not sure which, but I see some lines and some early stages of posterization. And generally, when you start to see that, it means that it's been processed a little bit too much. I don't know what the original looked like with this, so it's really hard to tell. But I think that the intent was there. It's a good capture. One of the things that I would urge everybody to do is, well, not everybody, it depends on your camera. I have taken to bracketing everything pretty much because I don't want to guess on exposure anymore. I know I'm going to be in the ballpark, but having a plus or minus an f-stop is really helpful in situations like this, where you actually have no idea what the exposure is supposed to be. And even if you can figure it out, by the time you have, people have changed their positions. I've taken to shooting quite quickly. I compose kind of naturally at this stage. so it doesn't take me a long time to do that. If I'm walking up to something like this, by the time the camera comes to my face, I know how I'm going to compose it. But I don't know exactly, especially in something like this. You have a bright sun out there, you've got water, you've got silhouettes. I have no idea what the exposure is. So I could spend 10 minutes figuring that out, or I could bracket it and know that I'm solid. So it's just a quick, easy thing to do. And it's been a godsend to me. It's just not worrying about the technical aspects all that much.
Very good. Okay, that wraps up comments on the competition. I'm going to stop sharing, and then Henry, if you want to share your screen and work through some of the edits you had mentioned.
Sure. Let me go to Lightroom. Okay. Are you seeing my Lightroom screen?
Yes.
Okay, I need to move these over here. Just... Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that I have done this year is I have decided to simplify my life. And I have decided that my brain is full, and that if I'm going to learn anything new, it's going to mean that I have to forget something, which is conceivably my address. So I don't want to be wandering around and, blubbering around saying I don't know where I live. So I have not focused on all the latest and greatest Photoshop tools, all the latest and greatest apps. I've actually gone back and looked at things from the point of view of what could I have done in the darkroom? And, when I say that, it's not a purist point of view. It's really just to simplify my life. And it was kind of, look at the great photographs that were taken without all the Photoshop tools. So I just sort of went back to that. Very, very few things that I do today are complicated. They're extensive and they build on each other. But I'm working in Adobe Camera Raw, which you can do in Lightroom or Photoshop. I work almost exclusively in Photoshop. I just do very basic stuff, if anything, in Lightroom. I use it primarily for cataloging and find it very annoying to actually work in. But I'm doing very simple stuff from a technical point of view. And my files are a mess. My workflow is a mess. And, I'm having much more fun. And I think I'm creating better images. So for most of these that I'm going to suggest, it's not magic. It's just really not magic at all. The thing that is critical is in the upper right-hand corner, you have your histogram, and learn your histogram, both in your camera and in post-processing. So with something like this, I'm looking at the histogram and saying, I've got more room in white at the top of the screen. So immediately what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the whites over, and that's going to brighten the image. I've got plenty of blacks there. I'm going to increase the shadow. I'm probably going to drop the highlights a little bit. Whites and highlights are not the same thing. So if you pull your whites and they start when you blow your highlights, you can tell because you're on the right-hand side of your histogram, it's going to be way up in the air like that. When you see this red line going up, you've blown your highlights and you really can't get them back down. So you want to be short of that. And if you need to control them a little bit more, you're working your highlights and your whites together. I got plenty of black. So this is, and after this one, we're going to take them into Photoshop. But that's what we were given, and that's what we have now. And it just, to me, that's a much more pleasant image to look at. That's an image that's going to at least get my attention right off the bat. So the other image I wanted to move to quickly is this guy, which looks like a perfectly nice exposure. We're going to edit this in Photoshop. And that looks fine. By the way, I just noticed this. You have a corner on the right-hand side that needs to be fixed. But, you know, the exposure looks good. Contrast looks good. And when I start with an image and I get to the point where I think I'm finished, what I do is I do this. I just go in, and it's a lazy man's way of doing it. So I'm just going to add a 3-inch border to the image. And now all of a sudden I look at that and go, oh, it's flat. If you're looking at an image on gray or black, it's going to look, that's what your contrast point is. You know, that's what your eye is looking at, and it looks fine. But if you look at these two, that looks good. That now looks flat to me. And that's what I'm going to go into Adobe Camera Raw and fix. And when I say my workflow is kind of a mess, I'm not building layers. I'm using layers, lots and lots and lots of layers, but I'm not naming them. I'm not keeping them. I'm not turning them into smart layers or smart objects. I'm basically going through and I'm doing two things. And I'm doing these all as keyboard commands, as actions. My first step on this is to make a snapshot of the image by pressing F1. The next one, oh, there it goes. F2 is I'm duplicating the image, and F3 I've got set up to take me into Adobe Camera Raw. So I go boom, boom, boom. I'm into Adobe Camera Raw. I've got my layer, and I've got my backup already built in to the creation of the frame. So one of the first things I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at dehaze, and that's not going to work on this. So I'm going to go up to my lights, and I'm now ignoring the white over here, and I'm just going visually. I can increase that a little bit. I can increase the shadow detail, reduce the blacks, increase the highlights. And I'd spend time on this one, but the point being that looking at it on white totally changes it. And in this case, what I've done is I'd say, okay, I took too much of the pink out, and I'd go back in, and I'd go to the magentas and turn down the luminance on them a little bit, the purples and the reds. And that's just how I would play with it. But going to white on a background is really important. Now, the other thing that we start to see is right up in here, we've got some modeling. So that tells me that I can't go very far. Some of that may be because the file sizes are small that I got. So that's certainly a limitation. But when you're looking at it, if this was sent in to a judging competition and the judge sees this black line on the bottom, that is going to knock you down a lot because you're in a heavy competition. You've got a lot of good images going on here. It's the little things that matter. So just keep that in mind. I assume that the Photoshop screen showed up. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so here we have a cell phone image, and in this case, this white bird is really annoying. And there's nothing that you can do to bring back the detail in that white. So what I would do, this is one thing that I do in Lightroom, because the Lightroom is just easier to do it. Your vertical lines are just off, and they're going off in multiple different directions. It's what happens with parallax distortion. But before you do anything, you just want to go in and in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever program you're using, is just do an automatic adjust to straighten your vertical lines. So right there, you've immediately improved the image by doing nothing other than straightening your lines. Makes it a much stronger image. Actually, this is much stronger image. In this case, you don't have much of a choice. Settings. There's something open here. You're going in. Oh, that was slow. So on this one, this bird is unsavable. So I would just go in with the remove tool, and I limit the use of the remove tool in my mind, just for whatever reason, to things that I could do normally in Photoshop. I mean, the remove tool is kind of an AI thing, and I have a real problem with AI. So I have personally limited my use to it. I could have done the same thing with the cloning stamp, but it would have taken 5 times as long. If I can duplicate it with a standard tool, I will use the AI version just because it's faster, as long as it's giving me the same result. So the image is already vastly improved, but we can go in here and I'm just going to use a brush to lighten up the girl a little bit. Her legs, shadows. And I'm obviously working really rough on these. Take the highlights back down. Working her clothes, her legs, giving her more of a focus point in the frame. Because she's flat. The other thing I think I'd do on this one is I'd probably, if I'm working with a brush, I don't use multiple steps in Lightroom, in Adobe Camera Raw. It's just as easy for me. She's now fixed. She's fine. I'm going to go back out. And this time I'm going to work on the reds. I'm going to pop the reds a little bit, increase the saturation, reduce the luminance a little bit. And it starts to make that image pop a little bit more. Here I'd work with a brush to take away the highlights just a little bit up here, because my eye is going to the top of the frame. It's going here, not to her. So when I'm first looking at this, I'm going all the way through her to this building, and I don't want to do that. So I would just go in, you could just go in here and hit a highlight for a brush and whack this whole area, pull it down a little bit. And again, that's working real dirty, and I wouldn't normally do that. But create a snapshot. That's the original. That's the other version. This is dirty in here. I'd have to fix that, but it immediately pops way more and is a better image. So it's all in the processing. This was a shot. This is a tough, like I said, it's a hard, fog is tough to do. But you're going to have to look at it and decide what you can do. Dehaze often works with fog. They've immediately done that. Looks better already. You've just increased the contrast a little bit. You have a little bit of room on the whites. You want to pull back the highlights a little bit. And now you can look at the shadows. Get the shadows up. Control your blacks. That's all I'm doing is playing around with the tonality of it. That's exactly what you would do in a black and white darkroom. You would try to control your tonality. I would say up here, I'm hot. So I would go in and I would edit this with a brush. But you can immediately, this is the import. That's where I am now. So there's ways to improve this. This is a strange situation because you're probably better off cropping this one down. I don't know. See if you pull the whites a little bit further. Things like this, you have to play with and take your time to say what you're going to do. Let's go to this one because this one's a fun one. It's taking forever. So if you look at this image, you can see a lot of a fuzzy area, a lot of sort of grayed over blacks in this area. This one is going to respond immediately to the dehaze command. So you can just go into Adobe Camera Raw, hit dehaze, and all of a sudden you've improved your contrast. As soon as you use dehaze, in probably 80% of the cases, you're going to want to pop your shadows back up. So you can bring your shadows back up, something like this. I never, ever, except for once or twice, use contrast, the contrast control. You have so much better control over things by using the highlights, the shadows, the whites, and the blacks. So I'm going to increase the whites a little bit here, which is going to throw things off in the histogram, and then I'm going to bring it back a little bit on the highlights, and let's see what we have. So we have this to start with, or this after 30 seconds. And it makes it, to me, it makes a big difference. It makes the picture much more interesting. But you want to be working with those four controls. Dehaze is a godsend for a lot of stuff, especially something like this. Use it all the time. But that to me is a better image than that is. Again, your opinion may vary, and that's absolutely fine. This guy has, this area right here just doesn't need to be there. So I would start by cropping in a little bit. No idea what Lightroom is doing. You really don't need all this stuff around here, and I turn it into a vertical. And now all of a sudden your tonality starts to look a little bit better. You're not focusing up here. I would go in and just take this out, this out. That versus that in what, 12 seconds. In here, you have a lot of room to play also. And again, I'm just doing Adobe Camera Raw. First thing I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to go to the blues. And I'm going to start adjusting the blues, the luminance and the saturation of them, and the purples. And I really want to bring them out because that's where the interest is. Okay. So that would be a starting point. Then I'm going to go back into Adobe Camera Raw, and I'm going to go to a brush, and I'm going to go to the whites, make it a tiny little brush, and I'm going to try to make the dragonflies a little bit more visible. In this case, I very rarely use clarity or, so I took that out, or any sharpening until the very end of the process, because you don't want to sharpen things for the screen and then have that as your only image if you're going to go to print, because print sharpening and digital sharpening are two different things. So I'm not sure why I have those things back in here, but we'll get rid of them. And it's starting to look better. I would probably take the edge of the lily pad out and do a fair amount of work. Oh, I know what it is. There we go. So, the changing of the composition, I think, helps this tremendously. From that to that, I think is a pretty good size improvement. And helps things out a lot. This, as long as we're talking about centering things in the frame, you can immediately improve this picture in Lightroom with no problem at all by cropping it down and putting her on a third line, putting her on a PowerPoint right in here, and that picture immediately is better than the other one, because now she's riding into the picture rather than simply being in the middle of the frame. You have that or that. And that's all it takes. In this case, let's go back to there. The tonality is pretty good, but you can also, you have room here on the white. So pull the white up a little bit higher, drop your highlights a little bit, and change your shadows. And now all of a sudden you've got a lot more detail in her black. And let's go back to the reset. We have that versus that. So what we're really talking about is we're really talking about tonality and composition. And that's really all that we need to be doing. So I think that one just improves instantly. And this was one where you could start getting a little weird with your colors if you wanted to. Because right now it's a picture of a girl riding a bike. But what happens if the orange tires start to change color? If you're focusing on reality, that's fine. There's nothing real about any of the photographs you're ever going to take, so have at it. I just did a talk to the Delaware County Camera Club on reality, and once they started to comprehend that nothing is real, everything opens up. There's nothing real about this shot. It was determined by the type of camera that was shot on, the shutter speeds, all sorts of things. But this picture never existed in real life. Let's take our crocodile or alligator friend, rather. There's something truly bizarre going on with Lightroom here. With a wildlife picture, the focus is always, or most of the time with people too, focus has to be on the eye. So in this case, my first starting point will be to go into Adobe Camera Raw and make the eye stand out a little bit more. There we go. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the whites and decrease the blacks. Actually, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go to a brush, increase the whites, make it blacker, and just do that. Take the whites up as far as I can, and then knock the highlights back. And just look at the increase in the focus on the eye. And that changes things immediately. In this case, we might benefit from doing the same thing with the rest of the critter. So I would try that and see and say, oh yeah, that does work. And I would just paint it. And that's giving me accent. I'm just increasing the contrast there. And the whole critter starts to pop a little bit more. I would probably come back and do a second pass at the eye, since I've done the same thing with all of it. Now the relative contrast is the same. But you know, you're looking at these little fine details in terms of the contrast. And that's the difference between pictures. The green here is problematic because it's not a great looking green. So I'm not really sure how you handle that. You know, it's it is what it is. Water is what it is. Might focus a little bit more in here. Kill the highlights. Let's just do another brush. Drop some of these highlights down. Highlights on animals, frogs, gators, things like that are really problematic. The best thing you can do is in these situations is shoot with a polarizer. So that reduces the reflections tremendously. So if I'm shooting frogs or aquatic creatures that have water on them, I almost always go with a polarizer. But that's what we start with. That's where we are now. And something like this, the thing that I do is when I'm done editing an image and I say, oh, this is my final image, I can't make it any better. I put it away. I don't look at it for at least overnight and then come back to it. Because the changes that you're making from your starting point to where you think you're done are so dramatic that you look at the beginning and you look at the end, you say, wow, look how much better this is. And then you come back the next morning and you go, oh my goodness, this is really flat. This is not what I want at all. And you make those adjustments. And sometimes when I'm working on some of my more complex images, they'll go for 2 or 3 or 4 days or a week with a touch here, a touch there, and saying, that's not quite right, this isn't quite right. But it becomes a creative process rather than a taking process. And it makes photography, to me, much more fun. This is one I thought that we had a lot of room to play to make it pop a little bit more. You have some room on the right. And now you have to make some determinations on your colors. And don't be afraid to play with these color sliders at all. You know, you can do all sorts of strange things with them and have great fun doing it. We're going to get that down. And that's beginning to look better to me. That's a little flat. That has a little bit more pop to it. It chose this one. Okay, this is a really, really good image. But if you look at the histogram, there's more room. You're stuck right in the middle of the histogram. So this is one that, as good as it is worth looking at and seeing if you can't play with it a little bit with just these controls to pop that image a little bit. And you're playing with the whites and the highlights. So I can pull my whites up and then reduce the shadows. Whether that's better, yeah, it is. So that's popping much more than this. That's the original. That's this. So there's room for improvement on almost all of these, but it's how you're controlling the contrast. You have some control of composition. You know, obviously, when you're shooting, you have more control of composition when you're in post. But this one, I forget what I did, why I thought this one. This is a great image. So it's because I could make it a little bit more contrasty and pop it a little bit more. Let's put the shadows back down. And right now I'm making global adjustments to things, and I would go back in on an image like this and rework the top. Okay, because I've got some spots here, some spots here, a spot up here, a line going across that represents probably the shoreline. And that's all fine, well and good, but I don't need it in there. It doesn't help the image. So I'd probably do this as a multi-stage thing in Photoshop, where I would do this first, and then on my next layer, I'd go in and I'd blacken down the top area as a separate layer and then blend them all together. So that's just how I approach things. I don't think you can really come up with great images in most cases if you're working on a global scale. So be looking at the individual pieces of the image. This was one that I thought had more pop to it. When you look at the histogram, you haven't really touched a true black over here, just borderline, which is okay, you're good enough, but it's all sitting, the entire frame is sitting in the mid-tone regions. So you have room to pull up your whites and pull down the highlights. Oops. And this is one that you're going to have to work in multiple stages, because this area requires different adjustments than this area. So right now, I'm just going to focus on the lower area and ignore the upper area. And that's the original, and that's the modified version. I'm also going to look at dehaze on this one, which again is almost always going to bring your shadow detail down. And that's too much dehaze. Dehaze adds a little bit of richness to the colors too, but that's the starting point. That's where we are now. And again, it's a quick global edit. The only point I'm trying to make here is that you can control your tonality really quickly. Just focus on the histogram and make sure it pops. Let's just take this image over into Lightroom, into Photoshop for a second. It doesn't look bad. It looks nice. It's a good image. But when we put it on white, see how much darker that looks? Looks okay. Looks dark. It is a miraculous tool that takes no time whatsoever to use. And then I'll just go right in and pull up my shadows a little bit, pull up my whites. Maybe hit dehaze a little bit. And again, really rough, but that's what you start with, and that's the change. So you know you're going in the right direction. And this is one that requires a lot of brush work, because you could go in here, this whole area, and I'm going to just do it as a brush, and lighten this in this whole section right in here. Pull up a little bit more. Change the blacks a little bit. Lowering the blacks, blackening the blacks, and raising the whites is the same thing as controlling your contrast, but you're doing it. So the other thing I need to do on this print is I need to pull up the shadows in the forested areas right down in here, maybe a little bit over here. And I'm just going to call it done for now. But again, we go from this to this. And we're not doing anything other than using the most basic tools. So note, this is all first week Photoshop stuff. If you're in a Photoshop course, this is first week stuff. We're doing layers and we're doing very basic controls and we're making an enormous change. So it's not something to be afraid of in terms of posting. And it doesn't matter whether it's Photoshop or any of the other programs. Any of them at this point have the same fundamental controls to them. This one. Okay. Empty space. It's just empty space. There's no need for it whatsoever. And it immediately becomes a better picture. When you crop it on down to a vertical. It's now I understand what I'm looking at. My eyes aren't wandering all over. And what you want people to be doing is to be looking at what you want them to look at. It's your image.
Oh, look, I'm terribly sorry. I was able to fix it myself. So
Excuse me?
I meant to ring you.
I'm sorry, that I couldn't understand that.
I think that was something else. I just muted him. I think he didn't realize he was unmuted.
Oh. But think about what you want your subject to be looking at. You know, what you want your viewer to be looking at. Because it's really quite critical. So you could see that most of the images can be improved a little bit with contrast controls that are reasonably simple, and some fundamental controls with cropping. There is a reason that the rule of thirds exists. It is a geometric pattern that's been around with us since the Greeks, as the golden triangle, the golden rectangle, the golden circle, spiral. But it actually works. I wouldn't, stake everything in the world on it, but it's a good rule of thumb to be shooting to. So things like this, you just have to see whether you can pull up the shadows enough to brighten it up. And oh, lo and behold, you can. It's no longer quite a silhouette, but it becomes a more interesting picture. Simple change. Not much. Pull up the whites on this a little bit. Pull down the highlights. So you play around with it a little bit, and you'll come up with some good stuff. This one I thought was interesting too, because here you can, starting out, if you dehaze it a little bit, you've instantly improved your contrast. And you have room on the whites here to pull it up, and you have some room on the blacks. So it's a simple matter of a slight contrast increase is going to make that pop off the screen more. And the one I wanted to show you was this one. This one is going to get more debate than most of the other ones. The stick is there. If you're in a wildlife competition, that may make a difference. But if you're going to try to sell this image, what I would recommend is taking this stick out. And it's an easy process with the remove tool. And again, I could do the same thing with cloning and virtually anything else. Just start getting rid of the stick. Decide where you're going to end. Pure. You have to be careful not to screw up what's underneath it, but if you're going to sell this to somebody, I'll go all the way up, at an art show, this will sell much faster than this. So decide what your purpose is, and go from there. I'd probably take this out too. Again, my concept of photography right now has absolutely nothing to do with reality. So that's not necessarily everybody's viewpoint, but if something isn't real to start with, let's see if I can explain that. If X isn't real to start with Y being less real or more real than X, that doesn't make X any realer. So this is just as real a picture as this is. Okay. The photographer did not see this picture, did not see it, did not exist, didn't exist in anybody else's mind unless the person that shot this picture has terrible eyesight. Okay, if they could focus on the bird and have everything else in the background be fuzzy, if that's what they're actually seeing, they need to go see an optometrist. Instead, they decided by their choice of whatever f-stop they used on this and whatever lens they used and whatever camera they used, that determined how this background would look. Nothing in reality determined how this background would look. So this is not a real pic. This is not any more real than this is. You know, it just isn't. So what does it matter? If it's not real, it's not real. You know, go ask Alice if she's 10 feet tall if you want to have a discussion on reality. But that's my approach to photography right now. And I think that it's, once you get rid of reality, anything goes. It's a whole lot more fun. And like I said, the whole point to this discussion is you are creating the image. You are not taking the image. You did not take this image. Didn't exist to anybody. So what does it matter? You know, if you paint the bird green, who cares? It doesn't really matter if your ultimate image is already fake to begin with. Anything goes. It's just an interesting viewpoint for creating imagery. So I think that's the last of the stuff that I have for. I think I've done most of these. Yeah, I think we have. Oh, the waterfall. My point to this, bringing this image up, is this is a great histogram. This is a great black and white histogram, and nicely done. Zero comments on the exposure with this. Things like this, you know, the tonality of black and white is totally a personal decision. So, but nicely done, perfect histogram. Can't imagine it being much better. So, Mike, do you want a couple of images of mine, or do you want to get?
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
going?
Yeah, we have a few minutes left. And yeah, if you want to share some of your current stuff that you're working on, we'd love to see it.
Like I said, one of the things that you'll notice, even when I post on Facebook, everything is going on a white background. So I don't want my images, that's how I want my images to look. This is a relatively straight appearing image from Florence. The windows have been exaggerated. A lot of time was spent on getting the texture and the tonality of the windows, the whites in here. So even though it was a simple image and really pretty much a straight image, there's a lot of work that goes into getting the tones where I want them to be. I can go from soft to very surrealistic. I'm just having fun with it. So
Yeah, a lot going on in that one. That's neat.
Yeah, most of my images now are somewhere between 5 and 6 different images combined together because there's no good reason other than I'm having fun with it. And I like a lot of my images to say something. There's almost always something hidden in them that I find to be fun. This is a combination of a couple of images from an art museum in Buffalo, New York. It didn't look anything like this, but it also includes an image that I took 10 years ago. So it's just a matter of creating stuff that I'm having fun with. This is the American Cemetery in Normandy. I have some real problems with what's going on in the country without getting into them, but this is what I see as, this is my view of the American Cemetery and what the loss that these men experienced is being forgotten. So I'm making a statement here. I think most photographs should make a statement. Why not? The traveling Wilbury said, even if you're old and gray, you still have something to say. And I'm taking that. I don't have a lot of time left to say what I want to say. So why not do it? I don't mind getting weird. This is actually the breakwater in Gloucester, Massachusetts, with Boston in the background. So when I'm taking shots, I knew exactly what I wanted and didn't get what I wanted, but I got the shot that I could use for something else. The lighting was off, all sorts of things were off. I couldn't get what I wanted, but I got the framework of what I wanted, and then I added into a bunch of different things. And there's probably 6 or 7 different frames going on in this one. Again, the American Cemetery. This is the wall painting is at Sword Beach in Normandy, where the British came ashore, and I thought it needed a little bit more, or I wanted to add a little bit more, so I did. This is also in Normandy. This is Mont Saint Michel. Rather than taking the picture that everybody else takes, I decided to do it a little bit differently. These people were actually on a beach. I combined a part of the Abbey with this, and I'd entitled this "Looking for God." So, there's a thought process that's going on. In terms of flowers, I'm now shooting with Olympus. So I have some limitations in terms of wide open depth of field. So I can't quite shoot the same flowers, but that's good because now I'm shooting flowers differently and I'm shooting them much more fun. I have just a blast doing this. And my entire theme with photography right now is having fun. So a bunch of weird stuff. This is combining something from New Orleans and something from Paris. And, this is listening to Led Zeppelin late at night. So
Awesome.
Butterflies, I have thousands and thousands of butterfly shots, and they're all the same. They all look the same as everybody else's butterfly shots. So I decided that I wanted to do something different. Just a quick grab shot from a D.N. Arbus exhibition in New York City. It just, when you see something, this is a shot, this was probably the 8th or 9th frame person that walked through that. I knew what I wanted. The pictures in the background were changing. I knew which one I wanted. I wanted somebody in front of it. So this shot probably took 25 minutes to get. But again, I had a good time sitting there, relaxing and taking this. I rarely do selective color or selective black and white on an image, but this image just didn't work as it stood. So I decided to just put a red dot in. Again, late at night, you can do whatever the hell you want. This is the Seattle skyline mixed with the pipe organ at Longwood Gardens, mixed with a tree scene from Western Pennsylvania. So they all sort of come together to make a surrealistic type of thing. Simple black and white image. I do a lot of movement images, a lot of slow exposures. Oops. It's a combination of different things from the Cleveland Art Museum. None of which independently make a picture of anything that's of interest at all, other than as a museum catalog. But if you start messing around, you can have some fun. Halloween in our area is taking on different, it's getting kind of weird actually, but so I decided to make it weirder. And this is a combination of, I don't know, 6 different images, different protest signs. This was a display, street display in Lambertville that was altered somewhat by me, but this is just shot through a store window. It's a combination of things. Again, I don't really remember what images I use. I don't take notes. I flatten images. I could never recreate them. And it makes it more like painting to me in terms of the process that, you either fix it or you toss it. You don't just go back to, the 15th level you put on their layer and fix it. It just makes it a little different. Dancing witches, just hoots and giggles. Same with this. This is a bunch of stuff from the Bread and Puppet Museum in Vermont. My favorite place in the world to go shooting. But nice normal stuff too. If you see something, react to it. It's an older one that I went back and I refixed. Instead of the original, I intensified the colors. So don't be afraid to go back to older images and work them. Not everything has to be fresh. You can make old images better. I changed her eye, I changed her lip, I changed the flowers. When I do nature shots now, I'm just looking at them differently. I'm creating them differently. This is created specifically in 2 different parts to create this image. This is only 2 frames, but it works together to create something that I never saw, never existed, but neither did the original image. If I saw like this, I could see the eyes of a fly in focus and the wings of the fly out of focus, I need to go to an eye doctor. It just doesn't happen in real life. And don't be afraid to try shutter speeds and use motion. There were a couple of good motion shots in your stuff too, but it's fun. Accept a high failure rate. You get one of these out of every 10 shots or 20 or 100 shots, it doesn't matter. You've got the one shot. So on that note, I'll finish up with my part and open it up for any questions.
Thanks, Henry. That was fantastic. Great. Enjoyed all your comments on our images and love seeing your stuff and your approach to things. It's definitely eye-opening to kind of expand your mind a little bit and like you said, have fun. That's what it's about.
It really is. I shifted to Olympus because I didn't feel like carrying 20 pounds worth of cameras around.
Yep. No, I'm an Olympus shooter too.
Oh, okay. So you know what I mean. There's a big difference.
Yep. I don't see any questions in the chat. Are there any in the room, Vince?
No, we had nice applause for Henry. And Henry, it's your 5th time doing this for us for this specific competition. So thank you for your insight and your wisdom.
Very welcome.
Real quick word, members, we have our equipment sale here. It will go public tomorrow, meaning trying to sell it through commercial ventures. So look over the list, contact myself or Bob Gross if you're interested. And I do want to just say we have a guest tonight, Michael Wise. Michael is the education director and a staff photographer for the Ansel Adams Gallery in Yosemite. Turns out he is a former resident of Reading. So we're represented in Yosemite. You want to just say hello, Mike? We're welcome to have you step in front of the camera or not. No. Michael leads photo tours in Yosemite. So just a minute, you can say hi.
Hi, everybody. There's something that Henry actually affected me that if I can say this quickly and I won't take too much time, but do you know Ansel Adams didn't think any of his images were reality?
Yep.
You know, and when we look at them and when people come into the gallery, they're like, oh, it's so clear. You know, oh, he just knew what to do with the camera. But he said his mind's eye took over. And I think Henry's saying the same thing, you know, that, once you take that reality out of it, and I'm not using this tool just to record it, the reality in front of me, everything changes. So anyway, that's probably not what you didn't want me to talk about, but I could keep on going on. And I bet Henry could go on and on too, because it's quite a realization once you do this, and your editing and Photoshop or whatever changes as well. In any event, yes, I'm a Reading native and I'm happy to be back visiting the family. I found that the young lady over here knows my cousin. I mean, so how cool is that to be back? And I will say that as a kid, I was super shy. And as you can probably tell, I'm a little nervous right now. So I could never come to these meetings as a kid. So this is a thrill for me. So I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you for having me.
And
Thanks. I guess we're
Henry, I have one question. Do you shoot for competition anymore?
No,
No. So
I shoot entirely for myself.
yeah, I think that's probably part of our membership's frustration. You're making changes that are not allowed in our competitions a lot of times. And is that allowed? I'm asking Vince, is that allowed in the Michael Day competition? So some of the changes that Henry suggested, can we make those changes?
there are no limits on the Michael Day competition, but we don't have a process for you to go back and redo your nature images that are being submitted. But no,
Yeah.
there is everything's fair game. But remember, in our pictorial, you can do anything as well.
Right.
Pictorial division. It's just our nature is restrictive, and I guess Mike can look at that along with image sizing as we move into 2026.
Yeah, what's the sizing for the Michael Day? Because I know that when you do downsize into a JPEG, you get some of that pixelization and banding, and that kills a lot of images.
I don't know it immediately, but it's relatively close to ours, within a few pixels.
Okay.
There is a set point for that,
Yeah.
and we use this set point because that was the PSA.
Yeah, PSA. Yeah, and the verticals really suffer, like you said. It's what 1090 on the vertical, 1080.
Yeah, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
In today's world, it's just, on high resolution monitors, it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it really emphasizes as long as you keep the compression to none or maximum quality, but you still get some compression.
Yeah, you do. If I could just add one thing in, since we have somebody that knows Ansel's work very well, and I think it's a critical thing. Adams talked about there being an external event and also there being an internal.
Oh, yeah. Well, usually I don't necessarily need it unless the fireplace is on, but that's okay.
Go ahead, Henry.
Okay. Adams talked about there being an external event and an internal event. And once you start thinking of that, My best example, that the easiest one is some of my surfing pictures. You're walking along the boardwalk and you see people surfing. That's the external event. The internal event is getting down near the shoreline, watching them, understanding what the water is doing, understanding what they're doing, and understanding your subject and trying to convey what you think is going on. So, I would urge everybody to stop taking pictures and start thinking about taking photographs when you have the camera up there. What does it mean to you? Why are you taking it in the first place? Yeah, if it's pretty, great. Yeah, if you want to hang in your bathroom, downstairs bathroom, fine. That's all legitimate. But when you start making photographs, it requires that you start thinking internally. You start understanding your subject, and wanting to express your vision of what you're seeing, because you're seeing something that nobody else is seeing. People standing right next to you aren't seeing the same thing. If you're shooting with an Olympus, or the best example, if you're shooting with a Canon, that sensor is going to render the scene redder than somebody. If you're shooting a Nikon, that's going to render the scene redder than somebody shooting a Canon. And still, a Sony shooter is going to be redder still, even though they're using fundamentally the same sensor in the Nikon. So you're all recording something a little bit different from a technical point of view, but it's what's inside of you that's so critically important that you need to bring out for your photographs to really shine.
Well, that's great. I appreciate your time, Henry. I don't know, does anybody have any other questions? It's been a great evening. We really appreciate your time and all the stuff you have had to say for us.
Are we going to have this guy back next year?
I don't know. I haven't asked him yet.
I didn't have any skin in the game, so it was fun for me.
It floors me that you guys invite me back. I'm sitting there going, really? You got to be kidding me.
It's not reality. None of it.
That's true. That's true. So,
Thank you, Henry.
thank you
Thank
all.
you,
I
Henry.
appreciate it.
Have a great
Night
night.
all.
Night all.